And record. Okay, I'll just mute you for now, John.
No problem. I was looking at something else. I didn't realize.
In Facebook, it's okay. In Zoom, it's okay.
Okay, I think we're running here, and let me go live on live stream. I think there's one other thing I have to stop from making noise. Screens. Here we go. Okay. Okay, just going live here now on live stream. And it's like all systems go. Just adjusting some sound levels. And welcome everyone to the Keshe Plasma Reactor Group for Wednesday, December 5th, 2018. I'm your host, Rick Crammond, as usual for this group in the last few years. And this is for people that might be new. This is the Plasma Reactor Group, which originally got that name because that's exactly what we were dealing with and discussing and showing and telling all the aspects of our plasma reactors. And that's what we still do here. But we've also broadened our horizons to more than just plasma reactors, to virtually any type or kind of the plasma technology and several other kinds of technology as we go along here. So I guess I can, I usually have my video open here. Just set things up a little bit. And then we can find out what's going on in the world of knowledge seekers who might have things to offer to the group here. Just get my camera set up properly. Alrighty, so hi and welcome to the Keshe Plasma Reactor Group. And the big question always is, does anyone have anything that they'd like to offer to go first here today? Any special stories, devices, other kinds of interactions? Maybe you have a question or something you like to discuss as we do in this group. There's a couple of topics we can touch on, but I'd like to find out what other people might have in mind first. And all right, anybody want to go? Anything that is on their mind for now? Or shall we?
We should add that Zoom had some change yesterday or the day before, and our three companions here haven't updated their Zoom yet.
Oh, okay. Right. They have a different color when
yeah,
they're not updated. Well, you can do that if you like. I don't think it'll affect the show. I think the last update was a relatively minor one, perhaps, but I don't know. Not sure about that, but if you have any trouble, then just update your Zoom. It's the bottom line, I guess. Alrighty. Let me see. What have we got going on here? I was been busy trying to repair a couple circuits before the program here, and I wasn't successful with my soldering iron to find out the problem. So I have to go to plan B with a little demo I wanted to do. Which maybe I'll work on that in the background here and get my device ready. I've got this contraption here I wanted to play with a bit, and which is a syringe. It's got actually some GANs in it. Before I put the GANs in, GANs water, you can see in there. But before I did that, it was empty. And I wanted to demonstrate the idea of an induced ionized field inside of a vacuum chamber, which this becomes a vacuum chamber when you pull back on the plunger, essentially. And especially when it doesn't have the water inside, which forms a water vapor inside. But if it's just air, then you have a vacuum, a partial vacuum by pulling this back. And then further you pull it back, the more of a vacuum it creates. So you can actually vary the amount of vacuum by the amount that you pull back on the plunger. And why that's interesting is, well, I have to get my demonstration set up so I can show you what the interesting part about it was. Unfortunately, my equipment broke down yesterday when I was demonstrating it to myself after shocking myself a couple of times. And then in soldering and troubleshooting, I wasn't successful. There's some other issues, I think, with a burnt transistor or something. So I just wanted to show a little aspect and bring up something that Mr. Keshe was talking about in the last workshop. But that'll be deferred for a few minutes here while I work on that. So maybe we can come up with something to discuss here in the meantime. Anything that's might be interesting.
Strange behavior.
Go ahead, Dan.
Strange behavior of one nail, how to say, piece of iron nail. It's like a magnetic, like keep the property of magnets. And one ordinary nails, it's in reverse polarity. Iron is attracted by magnet in both heads. I notice my wife and my kid saying when this nail from my hanging coil, one it's taken down. Another coil from 1.5 meters distance, it's moving in same time with another coil. I make a little video.
Yes. Yeah, I need a video or a whiteboard description of what you're talking about, perhaps, or something like that, so we can visualize it. I'm not clear on what you mean.
Okay, I sharing this video, and I making one strange behavior because it's not when it's magnetized one piece of iron, keeping polarity of magnet, but why another piece of iron is polarized in reverse? Another put a video, sharing the video, and if you want.
Okay, sure. I think I have to allow that somehow. There we go.
That normally depends on the carbon content in the steel.
Yes. Okay. It's from. It's you seeing. It's not playing yet. Okay.
Are you sharing a video or your live
Yes.
video?
No, sharing the video. It's not live. It's from my channel in YouTube.
Oh, I see. Sorry, it was behind my other window. I couldn't see it there. Okay, good. Yeah.
Okay, I going. Is the screw magnetized? The sound it's okay. This is one system of coil. This is rusty nail. It's attract in one. Iron is attract of magnet. Another is repel.
Okay, so that would indicate that the rusty nail is magnetized or polarized in some way then.
Yes, it's straight because it attract also of the screw, the the magnet, but not so much. Depends where is the point where it interact. You see, I turning when it's too close, it's attached. Another galvanized iron is for concrete. It's reverse polarity. One piece of iron is attract in both hands. Both.
Was this nail heated in some moment? If you heat it, it changes the characteristics mainly.
Yes, I know. It's became behavior like a magnet, magnetized. But it's strange how it's magnetized, how it's why it's this in this way. Because another identical is in reverse polarized. Okay.
You mean reverse, that the head of the nail is the reverse polarity of the other nail?
Yes. With the other nail, I putting from this nail in the coil, and it behave like a magnet, repelling and attracting. This nail I utilize for making, I don't know, I don't record better, but I think it's from CH3 or something making guns. I take this nail and its behavior like how is respond this coil with the others, because always I look in this field, this plasma, and talking, I thinking with, I communicate with this plasma. It's very easy to turning without this nail, this coil. And I make this experiment because my wife saying, "Oh, Dan, look at another coil. It's crazy. It's spinning and turning itself." Okay, this is for maintain. If you want making, I don't know. It's why it's magnetized.
Well,
Because
I'm wondering, what the environment was of the nail before. How did it become rusty, and where was it? Was it in a magnetic field, exposed to a magnetic field at any point?
It's utilized in one reactor of GANs from CH3. Is normally because you have the component of deuterium or H. Hydrogen is comported like a magnet.
So were the two, you have two nails, correct, that have different polarities, right? That's what we're
Yes.
talking about. So
Yes.
were they both put in were they both in different boxes?
Only one, only rusty. It's reverse polarity, and I taking one nail normally, ordinary, in my house and putting in same position in this coil. It's complete in reverse. It's polarized in the other
when you
way.
say you put it in position in the coil, in
Yes.
what coil?
In this coil, make a whiteboard for seeing.
Thank you.
Okay. I making this tip of change the color. It's strange because I hang in a piece of rope, one coil, hanging another coil of 90 degrees, and another coil inside. It's like this, something like this.
Oh, those coils. Yeah, I see.
Yes, I'm putting one nail here, and you close it with the magnet. When it's too close, it's attract.
Right.
This is attract. This is repel.
Yeah.
When you have this, when you are too close, it attract also this piece. With not rusty, normally I nail. It's polarity, like I say, for example, this is north, this is south. In this position, it's opposite. And I have this coils, ensemble of coils from 1.5 meters from another ensemble, like a Sabrina coil, in for my lampadary, for my light. It's when this nail is taken down, this coil is moving in the same way and in the same direction, in the same time with this. Yes, and it's moving. This is moving up and down, and this is also up and down, and no up and down, left and right, and turning, spinning.
Are they
It's
attached? Are they attached to something common at the top,
No,
like a
no.
wire or something? It's
No,
just
this is
feeling?
from no. This is for my roof, no roof, where it's attach the light.
To feeling.
Yes,
Yeah.
this. And this is for where it's taking it closer. Uh, it's attached here. It's independent. This.
Okay.
This is strange. Why it communicates both. The denominator common is not nanocode. It's simply copper. You have copper. You have same system like 90 degrees between the coil, and I make it. It's my baby child, both. I don't know why it's behave in this way. Why is magnetized this iron in this position?
Well, we have a couple of questions from Jedi. You can open your mic if you want to speak, if you wish, Jedi, instead of in the chat. Otherwise, I could read your questions if you don't want to speak or can't right now. Okay, well, I don't see you opening your mic. So he says, he starts out, I guess it's because this nail has interacted with the CH3 transmutation and now elements in it have changed. Because, yes, is it because one was in the position of the anode and the other in the position of the cathode? Or were the nails rusty before the reaction took place or not? So did you have only one rusty nail, right? And that was the one in...
rusty is utilized in reactor of CH. It's correct because when it through the current, plasma current to electrical current, it's magnetizing in one way, one direction. It's true. Another screw or nails, it's not magnetized in, it's not utilized in another way or another reactor. Also, this is magnetized, but in opposite direction. When you have to screw or a magnet, when you put and taking out this nail, it's not magnetized, no, normally. But yes, it is rusty. It's utilized is magnetized perhaps from this reason.
Right. If you had the wiring hooked up right to the nail, then the head of the nail probably, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that would.
Yes. Smoke.
Well, interesting though that it repelled and then attracted. That's quite interesting. I wouldn't expect that to happen, but I've had that happen with some magnets in some circumstances as well, though. So, sorry, my live stream sound was off there. Yeah, I was just saying that I wouldn't expect that nail, the rusty one, to repel and be attracted when you push it closer to it. But I have seen that a similar reaction at times with magnets, where when you push them very close together, they'll start to stick where they were repelling before.
It's like it's kind. It's like a compass, like a no when you piece of carbon in the up to the water, you create a compass. With this nail, I'm hanging, and what's happened? I'm making another compass for seeing what, where is it the north, where is the south.
Yeah, compass. Yeah.
It's
So does that nail, the one that's in your coils there, the rusty one, does it indicate does it go toward north and south? Is that where it's going to rotate to, or does it just sort of randomly rotate around?
normally staying is not moving. I think it's from north to south, geographical or magnetical. I don't know. But when I looking and interact with this coil, I'm moving like how I like. In the left side, the right side, it's communicated always.
Can you move a compass that way too?
I don't try. I try.
Why don't you put a compass underneath of the moving coil? That would be interesting because
yes,
the compass
I don't have this in this moment with me the compass, but I try to making this experiment for seeing what's happened. In the nail, or trying to move proper, actually, the compass.
Yeah, that would be interesting, all right.
Okay, thank you. I mute and listen what another person to have.
Okay, thank you, Dan.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have something they'd like to respond about that, or something else they'd like to discuss?
I could add, you can improvise a compass by using a gillette or something very, a piece of steel, a very light piece of steel, make it float on water, previously sliding it against the magnet, and that'll work as a compass when it floats on the water.
Yeah, that's true. And put a needle by surface tension.
For this reason, I saying it's comport like a compass, because when you put a piece of paper or with this nail touching with the magnet first, magnetize, it's indicating the water from the water what is direction of Earth magnetically. It's interesting how to comport this nail hanging in the rope with the rope. It's correct, John.
Okay, anybody else have any comments or something they'd like to present, perhaps?
We have Jalal with us today.
The birthday boy. I sprung it on them, Jalal. Sorry about that. It's Jalal's birthday today. Everybody can wish him a happy birthday if they want.
Yesterday.
You have okay, maybe yesterday now. Jalal, do you have a birthday question of some sort? It's traditional that someone has a birthday to allow them to have a special birthday question that always has to be granted or answered. Do you have any pending questions any burning questions that need to have an answer? Now's a good time. Get everybody on it.
You must be drying some car there.
He could be busy in the background, yep. Mario, do you have anything that you've been working on these days? Any pet projects or new concepts or old concepts that keep popping up, or anything happening that way?
Yeah, hey, Rick. Yeah, it's been a while, actually. It's strange. After the last time I came on, a series of things kept happening that prevented me from being able to come back on and follow up on that. And, you know, the last time when I was on, about a month ago, on the next day on the Knowledge Seekers Workshop, Mr. Keshe specifically mentioned my work. He mentioned knowledge seekers working on the periodic table. I'm the only one that I know of about that. And considering we were talking about it the day before, and I've been on the private teachings talking about it for years, actually, and Caroline I know, he was specifically talking about my work, hopefully others as well, but I don't really know anybody else that's really followed up very much on a new understanding of the periodic table. But anyway, what Mr. Keshe did, he mentioned people working on the periodic table, and then he went on basically and validated the premise that I've been presenting. He specifically said that these numbers, the isotopes or the atomic numbers or atomic masses, whichever numbers you use coming from the periodic table, Mr. Keshe specifically said these are energy levels and they're comparative energy levels. And then he went on, he explained a few things, and then he took a blank whiteboard and in big red letters wrote ratios, big red letters across the whiteboard. Said, remember this, I was teaching you about this, the ratios. Now, in other words, a new understanding of the periodic table of elements based on energy levels that are ratio-based, comparative ratio-based energy levels. And to me, I think the reason he went on there and said that is because I think he realizes something that I think is correct, that you guys are still not convinced of this premise, this thesis. And I say that because whether it was that week or the next week, I think it was last week, or maybe the week before, because it was about a month ago, John asked questions from Arizona. And I'm thinking, how can you ask that question? Because I know for a fact that John from Arizona was either here on the Reactor group meeting or in the private teachings or somewhere where I have actually explained that. I've shown that from Mr. Keshe's teaching. It's not my thesis, it's Mr. Keshe's teachings that I just putting together correlated. And he didn't seem to know the answer to something that he actually knows the answer to. And I bet all of you already know the answer, but none of you really know you know the answer. And it's strange, like the guy with the herpes thing when he's talking about, he used to use matter level light frequencies and sound frequencies to counteract the virus or whatever that he's been doing. But now he uses a completely different method. He uses GANS materials. Now he's doing plasma, where before it was matter level. And I'm thinking, how can you, that's not correct. There isn't a matter level and a plasma level in the universe. There is plasma. It's all plasma. But what you do have is a scientific interpretation of the phenomenon that's based on particles and waves, like photosynthesis, photons bouncing into electrons, converting to electrically charged particles and blah, blah, blah. And it's the same thing with all of the phenomenon. When Mr. Keshe told Nicholas Chuo years ago, I watched that again a few months ago. Mr. Keshe says to Nicholas, what I say isn't always what people hear. Now that's an interesting statement. What I say isn't always what people hear. See, when Mr. Keshe talks about matter level, most people think, right, particle wave theory, Mr. Keshe is talking about now. But is that what Mr. Keshe is really saying? Because what he actually is saying is there's a matter level interpretation. Protons, neutrons, and electrons is an atom. Mr. Keshe said, draws a spiral and says, here's hydrogen, here's plutonium. It's all one plasma. So you have two interpretations. You have the interpretation of particles and waves, matter, solids, liquids, and gases, particles and waves of particles. You have an explanation of the phenomenon in that matter level, and then you have an explanation of it as a plasma interaction, as a behavior of interaction of plasma fields. And from the point of view of the entities interacting, it's a ratio-based thing. It's not an absolute value. You do not have solids, liquids, and gases. We have a interaction with a ring magnet. I showed this before, where our skin can touch a ring magnet at a certain position. But to another ring magnet or to another magnet, the magnet that it sees is a solid ball, more or less misshapen, like stepped on ping pong or tennis ball sort of thing, misshaped because it's sitting on the table and it's a ring magnet, so it's not spherical, but it's seeing a ball, a solid ball floating in a piece of wood. And it can interact with it from underneath the table, on top of the table, on the side of the table, where we can only interact with it at a certain position. So the interpretation of what a ring magnet is to us is not the same behavior as it is to another magnet or the man from planet Zeus. So you have one entity, but three different interactions and three different behaviors. To a fourth entity, it doesn't exist at all because its eyes, ears, no, its senses are not in that bandwidth. So nothing there. See? So, for example, I'll give you.
Well, I think that's the whole issue. Yeah, the whole problem is
it is the problem. Absolute values instead of relative values. Armin is making that mistake. John is making that mistake. Almost all of you are making that mistake that I can tell. You're thinking in terms of, even like just a minute ago, I was going to come in and I thought, I'll wait. And because I'd like to show you guys something here again, but have you just to see it from a different perspective, but then apply that to what you know already. The phenomenon we call sound is not particles in the atmosphere getting compressed into waves that are bouncing into particles in your ear that are getting converted to electron particles that are flowing along thing. And then something that science cannot explain, it gets interpreted as sound. And light is photons bouncing into your eye and then converting to electrons that does the same thing, goes along and then does something in something that no one can understand in science, gets converted to what we see as light. See, that's matter level interpretation. When Mr. Keshe says matter level, most of the time he's talking about the understanding, the mirage, the false interpretation of a real phenomenon. Sound is not particles hitting your ear, it's a plasma. Light is not photons bouncing in your eyes. It's a plasma interaction. There's feedback loops happening, energy packages being generated, created. There's the essence of creation. There's this, there's a plasma interpretation and there's a matter interpretation, but there's only one physics. It's the interpretation that we've been applying. And even on an intellectual level, I see people saying things like, yes, everything's a plasma. And then the very next thing, it's some interpretation based on light or sound, particles and wave theory. Always ends up being skewed into it and messing up your perceptions, right? And there's another thing when Mr. Keshe talks about the matter level, the other category that he uses, if you think about it and start listening again when he's saying that, or go back to the other teachings and think about it this way, he's either talking about a misinterpretation based on particle wave theory, matter level, or he's talking about the particular bandwidth that we interact with. That's the matter level of the ring magnet, right? There's a ring magnet. That's the part we interact with. The rest of it, we don't. The only reason we even know it exists is because another magnet is actually telling us that there's something else there. Otherwise, we have no way to know it, right? So there's a matter level interpretation of the real phenomenon, but there's also a certain bandwidth that what Paul Hindman called our inadequate sensory organs are capable of interacting with. You can only see a certain bandwidth of field strengths in your eyes. If it goes above that or below that, we have no knowledge of it. And even our devices that expand that, they only expand it a little bit. They're only expanding it, a little bit. So it's really still inadequate because you have, from our perspective, even if it's not infinite, might as well be infinite number of bandwidths that we're not interacting with as opposed to the ones that we are interacting with, right? So you have certain behaviors. Something is solid to us. So that's at the tangibility level. Mr. Keshe would call the matter level at the tangible level, matter level. Or he's talking about matter level interpretation. He's not talking about protons, neutrons, electrons, photons, particles, waves. There's no none of his books have any chapters on wave theory or particles or photons. They don't really there. And even when he uses that terminology, you realize that that's not what he's talking about. He's not talking about particles. He's talking about plasma. So the idea that we need to reinterpret what we're seeing as a plasma, right? So sound, what we hear, is a bandwidth of field strengths that we're interacting with, right? So we can, when we interpret that, we're interpreting and understanding plasma. But what, like I said a couple of months ago, as soon as I mentioned flower life, 7 musical tones, people say, oh, that's matter level. And I'm thinking, well, to you, that's matter level, because you're interpreting sound as being particles and waves bouncing and converting to electrons. So it's not plasma. But how can it not be plasma? Of course it's plasma. Everything's plasma. It's a plasma interaction. So instead of just dismissing it as, oh, that's matter level, so that has nothing to do with plasma, instead reinterpret what it is. Look at the structure of a musical tone. It's a multiple core reactor based on ratios of heartbeat rates. This is the thing that Tesla did not quite get. In fact, no one got it. If it wasn't for Mr. Keshe, I don't think anybody would get it. He said, if you want to understand the universe, you have to think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. But the problem is, it's not vibration. It looks like when you pluck a string, you can literally see it if you slow down on a film, vibrating, oscillating, vibrating. But that's just the behavior of the part we can interact with. There's a 360-degree bubble radiating out from that string, which is what we're interacting with, which is why we can hear a tone. That 360-degree bubble is a light. You literally, a guitar is a plasma generator. I pluck the string, I'm expanding that field, and it comes out and I can hear it. So its volume is increasing. Same thing with the light bulb. When you turn on a light bulb, it's a plasma. It's not photons. It's a plasma. To us, what we hear is a sound. To somebody else, it's a light. To somebody else, it's a solid, liquid, or gas. Or to somebody else, it doesn't exist at all. To us, if we raise our level of our senses, then what we would see as a color would be a sound. It would be a note. It's just our level of interaction and the way our senses are interpreting, actually is the right word, interpreting the phenomenon. We see some as light, we hear some as sound, we smell some as, smells and taste, and then the tactile one, where something's solid or liquid or gas, or doesn't exist, right? So it's our behavior. The relative motion of the molecules, even in the stillest glass of water, the molecules within the structure are rotating around, they're moving. And if they're rotating at a certain velocity relative to our velocity at the skin level and our sensory level, then it appears as a liquid. If its fields slow down relative to ours stay the same, it slows down, it becomes a solid. If it speeds up, it becomes a gas, right? As long as R stays the same. But if I was to be able to slow down my senses, my field strengths, as the water is slowing down, like in a freezer, if my fields slow down, I could be swimming in what to you would be a block of ice. That swimming pool is frozen solid to you, but to me, because I've reduced my field strength relative to the water molecules, I'm swimming around in what looks to you like a solid block of ice. See, there is no solids, liquids, or gases. There's plasma, but there's a behavior. There's behaviors of the plasmas, and it's fractal. And here's something else. I'm convinced that the reason that the humans, us, have not gone to the next level of getting intangibility spaceship is because we do not understand deep space navigation. And it's really about the map of the universe. We don't know how to read the map. And the funny thing is, it's fractal. It's a fractal geometry. I see you're looking for something, Rick. No, I don't need to ramble on here, but I mean,
no, I'm still listening to you. I'm just trying to get my little device here ready as well. So
yeah, okay. Well, when this the flower of life. Can I get a whiteboard, man? Maybe if that's okay.
I can do that for you.
Yeah, okay. Okay, let's see. Okay. Okay. If you take the standard, do it the right way. Go like this. The standard spiral. Mr. Keshe says, uh-oh, lost it. Oh, okay. Okay, Mr. Keshe says, at this point, call it hydrogen. I'm going to put this here. At this point, we'll call it carbon. At this point, nitrogen. At this point, it's oxygen. So these are the numbers on the periodic table of 1, 6, 7, and 8. It depends on which numbers you use. These are atomic weights, or they're atomic numbers. Okay, Mr. Keshe has used these. So 6 is carbon, 7 is nitrogen, 8 is oxygen. Now, these are the ratios of the pulse rates. And what's really happening here is, at this point, it actually starts with the nitrogen and then divides out and goes on. But in each of these positions, there's a crossing of the fields. This is the thing that John did not understand. How do I open up a central core there? Mr. Keshe said, you don't open up the central core. You add pressure. Look, when a field crosses with another field, I showed this with the flower of life. You have this field going around like that. And you have this field going around like that. What happens here is where a central core. It's literally what Mr. Keshe told John, but I don't think he got it. It's drilling a hole. Mr. Keshe said, you're drilling a hole in here. You apply pressure to open up that central core, right? John should know that. I mean, I've shown this so many times. It was from Mr. Keshe's teachings. He said you drill a hole and you get the blowback, which is a plasma that's created here. This is what John has already created, but he doesn't understand it. This central hole comes from the pressure of the fields going in and drilling a hole in. And they also come back out. So again, it's about perspective. So this is what you have here. This is a position where there's a plasma formed there, a plasma formed here, and so on. But there's another thing you're not seeing, is there's not one of these. There's always the 12 apostles. So what you end up with is a Coulomb barrier around this central core at this position. So this is actually a layer. At this point, it's a layer inside the layer. At this point, it's a layer inside that layer. At this point, it's a layer inside that layer. It didn't drop very well, but that's what's happening. These are representing layers. So when you take this standard, I'll do it this way, I keep clockwise. Okay, if you take this and think of it, wherever you're interacting with it, you're creating a Coulomb barrier, a layer of entities that have a ratio-based pulse rate. So they're pulsing. So there's a multiple core reactor here. And where the interactions are where the layers are forming, and between 1 to 128 would be our periodic table. Also, that's an octave octave. So here's what, if I start with the central core here and I try to draw a Fibonacci cycle spiral, I can only go out about four turns on the spiral at the most on a regular printer size paper, based on this more or less consistently the smallest diameter I can get, which is about 1 centimeter. To go out, say about 7 layers from a central core of 1 centimeter, to go out 7 layers is about 3 meter diameter. To go on 128 layers, it's kilometers. And the gaps get bigger as you go. So say from 128 layers out, the outer one, 128th layer, to the next one out, which would be the 127th layer, the gap between that's 1,000 meters. Okay, it's a huge spacing within these turns here, right? The same thing with the flower of life. I can't get more than 4 turns on a piece of paper. So here's what Fourier did. He took this and unwound it and put it somewhere like here and unrolled this spiral into a straight line, because humans love straight lines. And these positions where we call the elements are the layering. Instead of putting the actual gaps, he's making them all the same size. Okay, and he's marked them off not by the gaps of them, but by, say, small enough that you can get 128 layers marked out on a piece of paper and place them by the ratios. So this is 1, and it's actually, okay, then this is 2 to 1. The next one would be 3 to 1. Carbon would be 6 to 1. Nitrogen is 7 to 1. Oxygen is 8 to 1.
This
Okay?
is hypothetical, or in this way it is.
Sorry?
1 to 6 is carbon. Is in this way you're looking, or it's hypothetical?
No, it's the ratio. Okay, whatever the frequency of the hydrogen is, it's X. We don't know what the frequency is. But all we can do is measure the differential. So it's X times 1. X
you
times
know why it's making this question? Because you saying 1 to 6 is like a carbon, but in hydrogen you have protium, deuterium, tritium. It's another ratio, another.
Yeah, well, these
carbon
numbers.
You looking like a carbon, but also you looking like a 3 deuterium, or
Yeah, but
oxygen minus a few protons or strength of protons. It's like an example, yes, like a ratio.
Yeah.
For this reason of making question. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, let me explain that. I'm using these numbers because Mr. Keshe used these specific numbers for the amino acids. So it's easier for me to go for these numbers. But these are the original numbers that were originally published by the Royal Academy of Science in the 1870s, atomic numbers. But then they had problems because those didn't seem to work out. So they came up with what they called the atomic masses. On this scale, hydrogen would still be 1, but these numbers, 6, 7, and 8, are actually 12, 14, and 16. And that means, so 1 to 2 to 3 would be the isotopes of hydrogen, the tritium, the deuterium, the tritium, and 4 would be helium, right? That's the way that works. So it just depends on your measurement value here. But see, those protons, neutrons, and electrons ways of measuring, it's not correct. And all of these numbers, they're unreliable because they're based on a mirage. They're based on something that's not the correct interpretation of what's really going on. So these numbers here, I'm using these because I know these are correct because Mr. Keshe used these, right? But yes, in fact, really you have to go to the isotopes, and then you got to know which of the isotopes. And it really takes people, Mr. Keshe ultimately is the only one who really knows which of the numbers. And again, you know, when we use these numbers and we start putting them together, you have to make adjustments by 25 to 50% to know what you're going to actually get. So the numbers themselves, see, they're not reliable because they're not really based on a correct understanding, interpretation of the universe. This is why I want to show you this, just to get an understanding of this, because I'm not trying to replace the periodic table of elements with a new periodic table of plasma elements. I'm trying to show a different measurement system completely, a standard of weights and measurements for plasma. And we need to interpret what we call the elements into this framework. We'll have to use these numbers because that's what we're sort of stuck with. But the funny thing is, once you understand this, in a way, you don't need a periodic table of plasmas. You use this. This is a different system because it's a ratio-based system, right? There's no absolutes. You don't have 3 is tritium. No, 3 to 1 or 3 to 7 or 3 to 16 or 3 to whatever. You can't have any absolute number. See, this is something like the 432 people all the time. I'm saying 432 is not a ratio. It's just a number. It has no meaning. 432 to what? See what I mean? So again, 3 to what is tritium? Again, see, it's about a different understanding of a plasma. Okay?
It's ratio of strange, because you have, for example, a ratio from 1 to, I don't know, 3. From hydrogen, you have 1 to 3, but in strange of hydrogen, if you have a zinc, you have 3 or to 1, but in another spectrum of range of strength. It's how to identify this range of neutron, protons, elements. It's like making, I don't know how to say, function or matrix, no? When you putting the element in different ratio, different strength, you making combination for obtain certain piece of cake. When it's able to identify, you are able to playing with this. It's like a ray, sorry. It's like your vision. Eyes of people looking in spectrum of visible light. What happens when you are able to see in ultraviolet, infrared? It's you elevate your, like I say, strength for modulate with this plasma for seeing. It's perception, like I say. But it's bigger for, like I say, Mr. Keshe. It's more bigger for what you are thinking, imagine you are thinking. But it's a good start for initial.
Well, yeah, okay, yeah, I understand. But look, here's the thing. This numbers 1 to 6 to 7 to 8. These are the numbers Mr. Keshe said starts with the interaction of the field from the Earth and the sun getting the nitrogen. That creates a plasma that opens up actually and interacts with the Earth here and here. So you get another plasma interaction here and here. The difference between these 3 interactions creates the plasma field here at hydrogen. Okay, so the difference between these is hydrogen. Now, these numbers 6, 7, and 8 to 1, in the upper atmosphere, 1 is a certain frequency, X. But when these frequencies of these plasmas come in contact with the salt water, they get slowed down. So X is a lower, slower number, frequency. But the numbers that we use from the periodic tables that Mr. Keshe is using are the same. It's still X times 1, 6. Oh, I lost my 6, 7, and 8 here.
Why saying it's slowing down? It's, I don't know, for my opinion, it's not correct.
No, it's because Mr. Keshe said that. That's why. Mr. Keshe said that.
I understand what you say, but you're saying it's slowing down. But why don't looking like is result of interact between these, because it's not properly, my opinion, it's not properly saying is slowing down. It's perception of slowing down. But this is middle layer. It's interact between another. It's like a cohon, like your amino acid, which is make interact with the field of earth and sun, create this, I don't know, hydrogen.
No, it creates nitrogen. No, it creates the nitrogen.
Okay, nitrogen. It's one plasma from interact between this plasma, this field, right?
Yes, but what I'm saying, here's what I'm saying. It's the differential frequencies of the pulse rates of these layers that create what we call hydrogen, carbon, and nitrogen and oxygen. It doesn't matter what X is in the upper atmosphere. And I brought this up a couple of months ago, and Armin came on, basically repeated what I said. And when I mentioned about coming in contact with the salt water, Armin said, yes, it's a different field strength. So you have amino acid with 1, 6, 7, and 8 in the upper atmosphere. Then it comes in contact with the salt water and it gets slowed down and it's a different field strength. Why? But yet it's the same ratios. You see, it's when you're talking about the atomic number, we think of it as a number that's tied to X, but it's not. It's tied to the ratios. X times 1, whatever it is. Look, try to see if you understand this in this way. It doesn't matter. When you have 3 entities, pulse rates at 6 to 7 and 6 to 8, or 7 to 6, 7 to 8, or 8 to 6, 8 to 7, you will get a differential of those that's 1. And so you will get 4 pulse rates at 1 to 6 to 7 to 8. At any frequency, it's an amino acid condition. It's an amino acid. It forms a central core that's got a soul. It's a living entity. It's like a flock of birds, literally, where hydrogen becomes the container. And these 3 interacting creates the container. And I can come back and show you something about how that actually works. But it's us understanding this. It doesn't matter whether it's in the upper atmosphere, if X is trillion to the trillionth times a trillion power in the upper atmosphere, it gets slowed down to a billionth to the billionth tenth of a power or frequency. As long as the ratios remain 1 to 6 to 7 to 8, you get an amino acid structure, you get a life form. This applies whether it's per day or per year or per grand solar cycle. On a galactic scale, if you have the Earth that has a pulse rate of 1 per galactic cycle, or what do you got, grand solar cycle, and another entity that's 6 to 1, 7 to 1, and 8 to 1, you have a galactic-sized amino acid. See, this is the thing. It's just a scale differential. But we're measuring the differences of the pulse rates, not any absolute values, the differentials, right? Did not see that. Okay? This is really so important to understand. This is why, look, if I take these as frequencies and I do the Isaac Newton thing, then I take 7 from 8, I get 1. I get 6 from 7, I get 1. I get 6 from 8, I get 2, but I get 1 from 2 is 1, and so on. And I subtract all these frequencies, I get 1. Mr. Keshe actually used protons, neutrons, and electrons to get 6, 7, and 8 to equal 1. I showed how if I played these on my guitar, when I converted these frequencies to these ratios to letter names of notes, when I play a 6, which would be an E to a G to an A, my lower A string will ring out because it's the difference. Okay, so I proven it. I've shown it here. I've played that on the guitar in the private teachings. So it happens when I play 3 notes on the guitar, I get a 4th pulse rate, and it's creating a living form there. This is a chord. This is harmony. It's a universal condition. It's life at every level of existence. Always. The three will behave as a single one with a central core equal to so many octaves above the hydrogen and hydrogen at the outer layer. That's the container. See, Mr. Keshe said in the kids' workshop, plasma is a fancy word for mag-grav fields in a container. But then he went on to say, the trick is to know how to open the container, use the fields, and put them back in the container. Okay? This is something I want to, if I do this amino acid experiment with this, I've shown this before, and you can see the phenomenon on internet all over the place. If I take 3 metronomes and I put one metronome at 6 beats a second, 7 beats a second, and 8 beats a second, they will start clicking. And they'll be at 1 amp, 1 amp, 1 amp, 1 amp, 1 amp, 1 amp, or call it, the volume of each metronome is 1 amp. What will happen is those 3 metronomes, because I can't turn them all on at the same exact time, they won't be in synchronization with each other. But you give it a minute or two, and they will link. They will behave as a single entity. They will create a container that contains them. And what's happening is every once a second, all 3 of these metronomes will click at the same time, and that means there'll be a spike of 3 amps at a frequency of 1. Okay, so you have 1 amp here, 1 amp here, 1 amp here. If you looked at the 3 metronomes on a Fourier spectral analysis or on a microphone and put it onto an EQ meter, then you would see spiking pulsing at 6 beats per second, 7 beats per second, and they would be pulsing. And once they connect with each other and they link, there'll be a spike, a pulse of 3 amps at 1 beat per second. It's an amino acid. It's the same thing. And if you realize that what's really happening is the amplitude is the volume. It's the diameter, or call it the radius. Here's the radius. If this is 1 amp, this one is 128 amps, meaning its diameter or its radius is out 128 to 1 ratio. Okay, so now you look at it, these metronomes are creating a pulsing here at 1 amp, and then once a second, it blows out to here.
This is the perfect. It's like what Mr. Keshe said. It's heartbeat. Is when in this moment, in this particular moment, when you are able to identify this point, is this point of return of magnetic and gravitational. In this point, you are playing. This is understanding heartbeat.
Well, that's what all of these are. The nitrogen's got its own heartbeat. The oxygen has its own heartbeat. And what they're doing is they're linking to create a ball inside a ball inside a ball. But look at it another way. If I increase this up into, say, 10,000, or if you have to double it, you have to double the frequencies to keep the ratios correct. So if you double it, like I think it's about 17 times, you will get in the hertz range. And so what will happen is these will be pulsing so fast that they no longer look like pulses. They look like solid. In fact, we would hear them as constantly ringing notes. And so this would be whatever, it's 3 amps to 3 amps to 1 at a pulse. But what's really happening is this energy is pulsing, this energy is pulsing, this energy is pulsing, and every time, once per second or once per so many hertz, it's an expansion of the field and a contraction of the field. Hydrogen exists as these 3 fields pulsing out. This is the 129 Tesla. There's an extra caveat that's that has to be added to that. But that's what was happening with the 129 Tesla. You can see it. It pulsed at that 129. There are these pulses. That's what this is. Hydrogen is the container of our amino acids, which is the key we're tuned to. Okay, that's the thing. It's the key we're tuned to. If we were in the upper atmosphere, we would tune to a different key. Same chord, different key. It's a different field strength. So because our eyes are tuned to the amino acid, where this pulse rate is what we call hydrogen. Don't forget, if you go up to the upper atmosphere, this pulse rate, whatever this is here of the actual hydrogen, is much faster in the upper atmosphere. In the lower atmosphere, it's slower. That's what we're tuned to. With the metronomes, it's slower still. With grand solar cycles and planetary and solar system size plasma interactions, you have a galaxy-sized amino acid. Okay, and the hydrogen isn't a thing. See what I mean? It's the result of the difference between the nitrogen, carbon, and oxygen, because that's what we are based on. Every cell of our body, of the physicality, where our senses are receiving information from, is tuned to this. The 1 to 6 to 7 to 8 ratios tuned by the salt water relative to the nitrogen in the upper atmosphere. So it's a ratio-based thing, and it's the same at every level of existence. Okay, this is the thing. Okay, okay. There's a couple of things I'd like to show you, but does anybody have any comment or something? Argument?
You have some more examples? We can't hear you.
The scripture.
I don't know. Somebody was breaking up there. I couldn't hear anything.
Can't hear anything, Dimitri. It's you're loud, but it's all broken up. You need to have a better internet.
I can say one thing. Mario, good morning.
Good morning and happy birthday.
Thank you, brother.
Did you have some comment? Or you just wanted to say hello?
I think that was the comment. Good morning. That's what Mr. Keshe says when people wake up to ideas and so on. Good morning.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Can I show you something here about this amplitude modulation? Because it's really the pulsing of the hydrogen. It's not a thing, right? It's an energy. And it's hard for us to conceive that it's behaving as a container, but it's the result of it's the three pulses pulsing at the same time that's creating an increase in amplitude, which again creates a container at the outer level. It would appear to be constant if it was up in the Hertz range here. But in reality, it's pulse, pulse, pulse once a second. If these are 6 to 7 to 8 per second, this would be pulsing. These are all pulses. That's the energy we're measuring, the pulsing. Okay, that's a completely different way to understand a periodic table, right? I'm not talking about is this number correct or that number correct, because there's a lot of problems with those numbers to begin with. Even at matter level interpretations, there's problems with those. Never mind with plasma. So really looking at this in a completely different way. Hydrogen can exist in the upper atmosphere at a completely different field strength than it does to us. Again, it's relative, right? And it's this pulse rate that we are tuned to, that these 1 to 128 layers here is more than enough to account for every known element plus many unknown elements. This also is the range of our human hearing. I already know that, about 7 octaves. Okay, and I wanna, if I could show you something here, I'm gonna clear this. Okay, if you do this spectral analysis thing, draw my badly drawn straight line. You have at this point hydrogen, we call it 1. The next layer is 2 to 1, but again, 1 is x times 1, right? Because it's all a ratio-based thing. So x times 1, x times 2, x times 3, up to 128, right? Now, the reason I'm saying 128 is not because I think there's 128 layers. In fact, as far as we know, and in the harmonic overtone series, it's how this manifests itself that we can measure. It's infinite how many layers there are. There's no, we have no way to know how far it goes, right? However, it's the structure itself is fractal geometry. It's a flower of life. And that's a fractal. It's just circles inside of circles inside of circles. They create certain ratios of crossings. So there's a pattern that keeps repeating. So you can do a pattern and then repeat the pattern and then repeat the pattern. So I think that there's this 128 to 1 ratio is the basic pattern. I'm 100% sure that's correct, but it's my understanding of it. So maybe Mr. Keshe will come in and say that's wrong. But if you look at it like this, there's another phenomenon that science cannot explain, but that has been known, all of this, the flower of life, this, and I don't want to call them the 7 musical tones anymore. That's, Nicola used that, and Nicholas, and others have used that, but it's actually the behaviors of their 7 behavior patterns, right? That's what we're really talking about, not 7 musical tones, but 7 intervals that repeat in however many octaves and so on, right? And again, it's a ratio-based thing, but I made man in my image is something that cannot be explained by science, and neither can this phenomenon. At a 2 to 1 ratio is called an octave. That's considered to be a replica. They're the same note. It's not the same note. And in fact, it is the same note. It's 2 of the same one, right? So if I call this first hydrogen, what are we going to call it? The first letter of the musical alphabet, then I call this one A, 1. Then that means 2 to 1 is an A again. But 3 to 1 is not. Okay, this is its own fundamental. It cannot be reduced. If you divide 3, you get to 1.5. If you divide that again, you're 0.75. You're below hydrogen, below our realm of existence. And it never gets reduced to an A. So it's a different note. But 4 to 1 is an octave because 4 to 2 is 2 to 1. And it's a double octave. So the 4th layer is another A. Then the 8th layer is an A. Okay, that's the 8th. And then just multiply by 2. The 16th layer is an A. Then you have 32, 64. Oh, I lost my 64. And then 128. Okay, so these are the A's. But look at something very interesting about this. These are only the layers that represent the doubling of the original fundamental at the outer layer. And this one, double that, is an A. So you see how many I have. If I count up an octave from the outer layer, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 octaves up. And when I add this last A as the container on the outside and the inside, I have 8 A's, an octave of A's. Now, at this point, the fractal pattern can start over again, where this becomes 1, and then you have a 2 to 1 and a 3 to 1 and so on, so that the pattern keeps repeating in an octave of octaves. There's a number of reasons. That's, like I said, this is the range of human hearing. This is the range of the atomic, the periodic table. This is the range of our eyesight, the 7 colors of the rainbow. This is, I'm pretty sure, I'm sure, the fractal pattern of the universe, and this, the behavior pattern. Look, but if you look carefully, between the first A and the second A, that first to second layer, there are no layers in between. But the second octave, from this A to this A, you have a layer in between. And then between this A, the third, the 4 to 8, you actually have 5, 6, and 7 in between there. These are layers. And between 8 and 16, you have 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, this many layers. And by the time you get to here, there's 64 layers. This one to this one is actually got 64 layers in between. Now, on a Fourier spectral analysis, these are amplitudes you measure, is what we're actually measuring here. So they're really measuring the volume or the radius of these measured by height, okay? So as the frequency goes up, the amplitude goes down, relatively speaking. So if this is 1 amp, up to 128 amps, say.
Mark,
Okay.
always between 2 layers, you create the middle layer between this layer. Always you have between 2 layers in different is this layer.
Yes.
You have always another layer. You create another layer, this the middle with the left or right mid layer. Is create like a fractal. Always you have infinity layers between 2 layers or same layers.
Yeah. Well, let me show you that. Let me show you that. But for now, on a Fourier spectral analysis, this line is 0 amps. And so then 1 amp, 2 amps, so on up to 128 amps up here. Okay. So what you're measuring here is the amplitude in this way, showing how far out it's expanding. And then this layer has, say, 127 amps, and it's basically going down in amps. But the space in between, which, yes, you're right, but this is called white noise, background radiation, echoes of the Big Bang, and all that stuff, right? But that's not correct. That's not what this is. So I want to show you that. In this first layer to the second layer, this frequency is unknown. If once I start at this second octave of octaves, this layer to the next layer, which is a 2 to 1 ratio, if this was 1 grand solar cycle, right? 1 per grand solar cycle, then this would be 128 per grand solar cycle once you start the second octave of octaves, which means 2 to 1 is 2 times 128. 2 times 128, so that's 256. Which means that in between this first layer, the first layer and the second layer of the second octave, there's 256 layers in between here. See? And then if you go up to that continues to 128 times 128, which means that the next layer is in the third octave up, the 2 to 1 ratio is 2 times 128 times 128. So that's how many layers there are in between here. So how many layers are there in between here? Well, we don't know what this frequency is. And what octave are we on relative to the universe, right? So this white noise is exactly what you were saying. It really is, in principle, an infinite number of layers going this direction, as opposed to going this direction. See,
I've got to just jump in here, please, Mario.
Yeah.
You've taught this before, and when you taught it before, you used a different method. For me, personally, the way you were teaching your comprehension of the bit of bandwidth of knowledge that you understand. This is the direction you're going with this, without question, is the right direction. I know that, yeah, and without question. But when you taught it before, you weren't using, if you want, Western science linear line. Remember when you taught it before? That bandwidth line you had was the best representation, the closest representation we could get on a 2D picture, and it was not linear. It was a spiral, and it was the spiral chart of elements, which when you put it into a spiral, you can then step outside the bandwidth of this Coulomb barrier and see how literally the universe is the same thing, and it's on a spiral. You know, this is only from my personal comprehension, but the way you're teaching it at the moment is really complicated.
I don't know if you saw it. I started out by drawing a spiral and then unrolling it into a straight line. That's what this Fourier spectral analysis is.
Yeah, no, I didn't join until an hour into it.
This is a spiral. It's just taking the spiral and unrolling.
It does not make sense if you take it out of the spiral. It doesn't make sense. But listen, when it's in the spiral, we can plot carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, and nitrogen within the band, within Earth's blue planet Earth's bandwidth. Yeah, and if we made those plots, listen, if we made those plots, yeah, and we had it on acetate, for instance, okay, and then we had the spiral of elements underneath, and you could put it on there. You had a ratio between the carbon, the oxygen, the hydrogen, and the nitrogen within that bandwidth of blue planet Earth. But because it's on an acetate, do you remember how we turned it? And it's, you know, it's on the spiral and it goes round. You know, if we're going more gravitational, we're going more possibly ascension, and you go along that line, things get denser. You know, they get denser. And that ratio that you're holding between the carbon, the oxygen, the hydrogen, and the nitrogen, maybe it's a fundamental ratio, okay? But as soon as it comes out of Earth's Coulomb barrier, it's in a completely different environment, and the fundamental ratio is kept, but it's on a different bandwidth. You know, fundamentally it's the same, but it is completely different, and you cannot understand that, unraveling that line. That line has to be a spiral. That's the best. It needs to be a spiral, but at the same time, it needs to be three-dimensional. That's the closest you could, possibly get. There isn't an algorithm that would be able to plot it, but that's the crudest you could get. A three-dimensional spiral. Putting it on a single line, it's going backwards. It's going back into Western science, and it's going all, putting it on that line, it's going figures.
Well,
there's no dynamism there. You've taken the life out of it.
But no, I'm not. These are layers, Dimitri. Those spirals, there's 12 spirals. I showed us the flower of life. You can draw it with circles. They create, as they spiral out, they cross with each other and create layers.
Changing the way that you draw it is the same as slightly tinkering the words of Mr. Keshe's teachings.
Is what?
You know exactly what I mean by that. The way that you have drawing it in a straight line, unraveling the plasma, and then having it how it was previously taught, in many ways is the same as when Mr. Keshe gives his teachings, and for whatever reason, one word is changed by accident, misinterpretation, or whatever, it completely changes teaching. It completely changes the essence of it. And that is that ratio of change from changing that one word in what he's teaching to unraveling this into a straight line. It's the same thing. It's the same thing.
No, it's not, Dimitri. No, not the way I'm seeing it. To you, maybe, because you're looking for visual representations of this. This was why I was so.
You can't visualize a plasma. You cannot visualize a plasma. You can feel it.
You
can't visualize it though.
Yeah,
you can't visualize it.
Yes, you can. I've got drawings of it. I've shown. You've seen drawings of it.
The drawings of a plasma at what field strength?
At any field strength, it's a ratio. It's a ratio. Whatever size diameter you draw the circles gives you that ratios of those of the structure. You have seen it a million times. You've been seeing it.
I know what you're talking about. I understand what you're talking about there.
Yes, but all I'm doing is I'm using what Fourier came up with was a way to measure the spiral. And that's what we use to measure the elements because we have to tie.
There's no spiral there. It's a straight line.
It's
changed it slightly and it's changed the essence of it.
Look.
Okay. Listen, I'm going to just shut up and be quiet because I want to understand what you're teaching.
Well, okay. Look, if I draw this, that would be another way to draw this. And you have to have 128 of these. And they can't be spatially correct because I could only get this far on the whole whiteboard. It might get a little bit of the next layer here, and then that's it. Okay? So it can't be correct spatially. All right? So what I'm doing is just drawing a line and saying, okay, this is 128, 127, 126, 125 to 1. No different. That's all this is. That's how you can look at this. These are the layers. And the height measures the actual distance this way. The amplitude. That's the thing we need to understand. It's not so much the drawing or the way I draw it out. It's a plasma. It's this. Inside another one.
Do you know what you just said then?
Inside plasma. This one.
It's this. And then that did, be quiet. It did make me think of how my conditioning with towards this science has made me have the interpretation that just putting a single line there is not comprehensible, you know? Where I've kind of indoctrinated myself in the other way.
It's strange that you say that, Dimitri. How many times I have said there are no straight lines in the universe. And I started this by saying Fourier draws it out in a straight line because humans like straight lines. They like to see things as straight lines. So you're right. However, that doesn't matter. It's about understanding that you have a plasma structure that's got a particular positioning of the layers. And it's the measuring system of this. This is what happens when you pluck a guitar string. Guitar string's in a straight line. This is the middle of it. I can only see half of the length of the string here. Okay, that's the way that goes. This would be we'll call it the 12th fret right here. Okay, this is the way that goes. So, you know, it doesn't matter how it's represented here. It's how you guys understanding that this pulsing is going from here this way. Huh? But then you also have navigation in this direction. This is the thing you guys really need to start to think about. How do you tune to something? I can go to something at this frequency way up there by going through all these layers. Or if my position is here, I might just go back one layer and in 3. See, so this is the thing. But in a simpler way, in between here is not 0 amps. It's got amplitude. It's just that it's compared to these are spikes in amplitude. So the real question shouldn't be, I'm not even sure really what you were asking, Dimitri, in particular, but to anybody, what is this space in between here? And why is it at 0 amps? And this is at 128 amps or say 127 amps. There's some caveats to that and so on. What is causing these increases in amplitude here? And what does that mean? If this whole plasma is a point here, what's happening? It's expanding in 128 layers in both directions, actually. It's expanding in a bubble that at the outer level is expanding out to 128 to 1 diameter. That's not the exact way to calculate the ratio, but something like that. Okay, and this one's 127 to 1, so that's why it's this layer. But the real, again, what is causing this pulsing here that causes this to come out to this ratio? Okay, at these particular spikes, 128 spikes between the first octave of octaves. See, this is the thing, right? I guess I'm probably losing everyone here now. I don't know. The gaps, okay, how to pull a field out of a plasma. Mr. Keshe said the trick is to know how to open the container, use the fields, and put them back when you're done. Okay, so in a way, it's like this. If I have my my layers of hydrogen, right? All these layers, 128 to 1. Okay, and I have oxygen. It also has 128 layers. Let's put it here, 128 to 1. But relative to the hydrogen, this one, oxygen's pulse rate is 8 to 1. That means that the outer layer of this field is going to link 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever, 8 here. And it's going to cause a feedback loop connecting this one to this one, or this layer to this layer. And you're going to get a feedback loop connecting these. And then you're going to get another feedback loop connecting the oxygen second layer, which is 2 to 1, but relative to hydrogen is 16. You're going to get another one linking here and creating a feedback loop. And you're going to continue to get these feedback loops, which is doing what? It's pulling the field of 8 here and 1 here out and creating a single field here. I should do this in another way. Let me clear this. Okay, if I have multiple core reactor.
Mario, could I get you to make your drawings a little bit bigger in general so that people with iPhones and stuff can see it, because they'll see the full screen, just little things.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I got to get.
Maybe go to the next size, bigger.
Oh, you mean the size of the pencil thing? Yeah.
Well, both actually, both the total image and the size of the pencil, so that people with iPhones. So
I'm not sure how do we.
You can go to the
line width. Okay, yeah, I think so.
Great, thanks.
Okay, keep it blue. Get a line width like this. No, I'm not getting anything.
You may have to reselect the draw.
Yeah, okay, is that better?
Yeah, perfect, thanks.
Okay, all right, I'm just gonna do 3 of these, but you realize you have, another one here. I'll put another one in here, another one in here, another one out there. You need at least however many you need. And I need, say, 8 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Just do it like that. Okay. The first layer of this one is going to link to the 8th layer of this one. And you're going to get a feedback.
Why?
Because
you're thinking in this way?
Because cats with cats, dogs with dogs, field strengths with field strengths. But in this case, it's the pulse rates that link them. This is something known. We know this. If I take my guitar string, 2 guitars, I pluck the A string on this one, the A string will ring on the other one if they're tuned together. I can't stop that other string from ringing unless I detune it. If I detune it a little bit, it'll stop ringing. And it can be a steel string, nylon string, bone, it can be anything. It's the frequency that actually links them. So this one's 8 to 1. So if this is your oxygen and this is your hydrogen, there's the first layer of this links to the 8th layer of that. The second layer of this links to the 16th layer of this one, which you can't really get in there, right? So what you're really doing is, if I, let me get rid of that last one.
What happens when you interact between these layers in same plasma, between the layers?
Right here, this is what you get. You get the fields, the frequency of the difference of the frequency of this one and this one. In this case, it's 8 to 8, which are the same, which means you'll get a pulse rate at an amplitude out here of 8 to 1. So you pull these fields right out of there, created a container. And you got the same thing going on with the 16th layer. So that's creating another one at 16. Another one at 24. See what's happening? You're creating a multiple core reactor, but all of these fields are with the volume that's increased. It's the interaction. It's the interaction between any two entities, and then where they interact, they create a molecule. And it's not just the molecules, even the atoms themselves. What we call atoms are not atoms, they're plasmas, which means they have their own. This is more or less what a nitrogen atom looks like. It's the field from the sun interacting with the field from the earth.
What is the flow in that, Mario?
Sorry?
What is the flow in that?
The flow. Okay, you have, because this one is, the first layer has the fastest velocity of the gradient flow. It goes from 128 on the inside to 127, the second layer. This has the pulse rate decreases, the frequency decreases, the mass decreases, but the volume increases and the flow rate increases.
Okay.
So
can I ask you one thing? Can I ask one thing? Can
Yeah.
you take this draw out and draw me a drop of water? And you know, drop of water is.
Well, this would be a drop of water if that's a hydrogen and that's an oxygen. This
you have two hydrogen.
No, this would be a hydrogen to oxygen or oxygen to hydrogen. This one's 1 to 128, and this is 8 to 16 to 24. It's 2 to 1, 3 to 1, 4 to 1, 5 to 1. But relative to hydrogen, this oxygen is 8 and hydrogen is 1. But the ratios of the fields are still 1. Oh, I keep losing that. It's 1, 2 to 1. So 1 here, X is 1. It's X times 1. And here's, right? So relative to hydrogen here, and this is the oxygen, this one's 8. So this one links to the 8th layer. The 2 to 1 would be 16. So that one links to the 16th layer. And you have these gaps in between. That becomes its energy signature. And the difference ultimately becomes the difference of these two, which is a hydrogen that will create a volume out here. That's the outer layer of it. And that would be the hydrogen. So you have a hydrogen and an oxygen and another field strength. That's the same heartbeat rate as hydrogen, but a volume that's increased. So you have the scientists see 2 amps of hydrogen, so to speak, and 1 amp of oxygen and think it's 2 hydrogen atoms. No, that's not right. It's a mother and a father and the baby. See, that's what's happening. And so the layers get dictated by how this one links to this one's layer and to that layer, and this one links to this layer, that layer, and you get your energy signature. You get your water molecule. This is a really crappy version of a water molecule. It's, I'm sure, much more beautiful in reality. But you see,
Okay.
that's
Okay.
and you can have a water molecule. Hang on a minute. Just let me add something. In the upper atmosphere, you have hydrogen and oxygen. Yeah, but hydrogen isn't the same frequency as it is at our level. So the water to us is not water to somebody else, because water is based on their oxygen and their hydrogen relative to their amino acid. Ours is to ours. So to them, what we see as a liquid water molecule, to them, it's a solid brick of gold. See?
Okay, Mario, I want from you 3 sections here. Take this draw out and draw me 3 sections of drop of water in solid state, in liquid state, in gas state.
Okay, first of all,
how are you going to draw it? In 3 sections, please.
You're not talking about a water molecule. You're talking about the interaction of a whole bunch of water molecules.
No, one drop of water. That means one
drop of water isn't a single water molecule.
1 oxygen, 2 hydrogen, and there is interaction between.
No, that's one water molecule. See, it's not even a water molecule the way we think of a water molecule. You're still thinking in terms of having a hydrogen and oxygen. It's really, well, in a way, I suppose you do. You have the hydrogen and oxygen. But this is a plasma. They're both 2 plasmas that have heartbeat rates at a ratio differential. Okay.
But now you have 3 plasmas. If you are speaking about plasma, now you have 3 plasmas.
That's right. 1 + 1 = 3. You have the essence of creation. That's right. So you have this central communication hub. So these 2 now behave as a single entity. 1 water molecule. Now, you have water molecules. When you have more than 1 water molecule, then you're talking about a drop of water that has thousands or millions of water molecules in it. Okay? So now you're talking about the behavior of different water molecules and how they're interacting with each other. And then again, it's relative to our position. When you have water molecules together collectively behave like liquids to us at our relative field strength, to the relative motion. There's everything in you think your finger is solid, but it's not. There's energies pulsing and rotating, and fields flowing. Every single cell of your body is an entire galaxy of galaxy of plasmas. Okay, what's happening is it's this central core that makes these all behave as a single entity, the flock of birds thing that Mr. Keshe talked about, how the metronomes synchronize. And what's happening? This one's got its pulse rate here, and this one's got its pulse rate here. They link together and beat once 8-to-1 times here. That means you're getting this. This one's pulsing by itself. Okay, this one's pulsing by itself. And 1 to 8 times, the 2 of them pulse at the same time. And the pulse expands out to the outer layer there. I keep losing my, out to here. So this is really an expansion this way and a contraction this way. This is actually expanding this way and this way. I'm going to change the color there. See, we're looking at energy that's going out and in. Yeah? And this is happening here. You've got these energy pulses going out and then in at different ratios. So you got a central core, a central core, a central core. This one pulses this far. This one pulses this far. together, they pulse this far. See what's happening? And if they were slowed down, you could hear two metronomes doing the exact same thing.
Mario, do you allow me to draw?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we can understand more.
Hello.
Sure, if you want to clear that drawing, it's okay.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
I understand what Mario means.
If I take...
Yeah, you see, I'm talking about pulsing. Energies that pulse out. Yeah, that's a different way of understanding things, I think.
Okay. From my understanding, when I have one oxygen, when is that? It's not coming.
Sorry, I was erasing there. Maybe I messed you up.
Okay.
Just reset your...
When I take one oxygen and through 2 hydrogen, and I want to draw it in the plasma state, and in the 3 levels, in matter state and liquid state and gas state, I will do it as Mr. Keshe always teaches us, in this way. This is the oxygen. This is the hydrogen. And this is the 3rd hydrogen. Why is so?
No, Jalal, Mr. Keshe.
Just wait.
No, well,
just wait to understand. Maybe I'm wrong, and then we will understand together. We always we have gravitational and magnetical. Both of them working in the same time. When you have this oxygen inside and one hydrogen is going the same direction, and you have the 3rd hydrogen going opposite direction, then you have here the state of liquid. If you have, this is the 2nd one, gravitational, oxygen, gravitational, hydrogen, and gravitational, hydrogen, you have solid state. If you have magnetical, and then you have the 3rd one. Come, guys. What you will have here?
Yeah, I know you're going to say gas, but no. But Jalal, this is not Mr. Keshe's teaching. Mr. Keshe never explained water like this. And what's more, you're
okay. Wait.
Well, hang on a minute.
Just wait.
Well,
wait a second, please. Wait a second. You have the sun here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many we have? 8. And the 9th, all of them going anti-clockwise. Only one, the last one, the positron, going clockwise. Why? This is our solar system. Tell me why. Why the sun going anti-clockwise? And why the earth is going anti-clockwise? And all of them is spiral, moving all the time. Why you have this state? How it become one atom? And this is oxygen and 2 hydrogen. H2O. Why this one in the same time is in the solid state, the same it is in liquid state, the same in the gas state? How become?
Well, look, Jalal.
It is the flow, my friend. It is the flow.
Because first of all, the structure of what you call a water molecule based on hydrogens, 2 hydrogens and oxygen is not that. It's not 2 hydrogens and 1 oxygen. And what you're calling liquids, solids, and gases is not the behavior of a single so-called water molecule, but the interaction of multiple water molecules. You can't have a single atom or a single molecule of water behave as anything. It doesn't have any behavior. It's the interaction.
No. It behave. You know why?
No, it doesn't, Jalal.
No. Wait a minute. Wait a second, my friend.
Well,
every one of them, it have own structure. Oxygen and the 2 hydrogen. It's not one.
No, Jalal.
You have interaction between them.
You're still just going along with the fact that you have atoms. And that's what I'm trying to show you. You don't have. That's the whole point of all of this. And what Mr. Keshe confirmed is
you have an entity. You have plasma.
You have plasmas.
Yeah,
at a mass level of atoms that size. But they're plasmas. They only act and have behaviors at the point of interaction. They have no existence by themselves. They cannot. It doesn't mean anything. You don't have anything by itself. That's like 432. To what? See, this is the thing. You're still looking in terms of absolute values. You have an oxygen atom. Well, but you have a ratio of 8:1 in the upper atmosphere, but you also have of plasmas, but you have also at what we call water at a slowed down frequency. So what is hydrogen? What is oxygen? How can oxygen be oxygen unless it's an 8:1 ratio? And to where? To who? To the entities in the upper atmosphere. 8:1 in their level is water.
I have in my packet, in this moment, I have one ratio of 1:8. This is not significant. It's not mean. It's I have 1:8. I have this. What do you say?
What do you mean? What do you have that's 1:8? What?
A ratio of 1:8.
That's right. If you have an energy,
it's not important.
Yes, I'm talking about energy pulses. In
the package of energy, I have ratio of 1:8.
What you will get,
I asking why? Why? You understand what is my ratio 1:8 is not the same your ratio 1 to 8.
Why not?
I have hydrogen. Perhaps you have oxygen ratio 1 to 8. It's the same.
What are you talking about 1 to 8? Hydrogen.
You say 1 to 8. You chose this ratio. It's not important what ratio you choose. I demonstrate I have the same ratio 1 to 8, but with another plasma, with another layers. It's not the same thing.
Yes, it is the same thing. Yes, it is. That's why people get water from their, plasma reactors. Water starts pouring out because they have interactions at 1 to 8.
Another quick asking, Mark. In the one molecule or one plasma of water, these two oxygen is the same no ratio strength of plasma? No. One oxygen you have one strength, another oxygen you have another strength. Hydrogen is another strength. It's a packet. It's a limit.
No, you don't have an absolute value for oxygen. It's a ratio. It's when you have a plasma pulsing at 8 times to 1, you get within a bandwidth range frequency that we can interact with it, it'll be water.
Okay, if you put 8 of Rick and 1 Daniel, I have ratio 1 Daniel, 8 Rick. It's not the same.
Wait, you have wait.
Like 8 Mark and 1 Jalal. It's same ratio, but it's not same strength. It's individual. You don't have, have the ratio.
No, you're again,
is different.
No, again, you're thinking in absolute values. It's not, I'm not talking about, because 8 of us, we don't have the same frequencies exactly. So which one of our layers are leaking? See, it's again, you have to look at layer by layer by layer by layer linking of any 2 entities and how they behave. It's a relative measurement system. You guys keep going back to the absolute. You have these 8 people to 1 person, you don't have it raining. Well, they're plasmas, but you don't know that their frequency pulses they're all the same. They're basically humans. They're within a comma of themselves. So you don't have a ratio of 8 to 1. You have a ratio of 8 to 1 in mass, but not in frequency. You see what I mean?
Yes, this is the point.
How do the isotopes come in then, Mario?
They're just nothing but numbers that have been adjusted. They're what a derogatory term for scientific theory is.
So you're saying that it doesn't matter about isotopes or whether it's a different element or not or anything. It's just plasmatic fields that interact.
That's right. It's the transmutation
between elements. They're all the same, basically.
They're all the same. They're all the same.
So then you don't have any need to do anything with any elements or transmute anything because everything's all the same.
No.
You have distinction between everything's the same though. So there's no. How do you account for any
it's what they say
with the isotopes and the different? Say one is, I don't know, radioactive isotope and one isn't, and that kind of thing. They're very different in their qualities, but yet your system doesn't seem to take that into account, or I don't see how it does.
Sure it does, because it's a ratio based on hydrogen, which is the fundamental of ours. In other words, they're all plasmas. They all have the same structure, but relative to our fundamental key, this one's a higher note and a lower note and a much higher note, and this one's dissonant and this one's consonant, and this one creates harmony, this one creates water, that one creates radioactive behaviors, it's the interactions between the elements. They're all plasmas. They all have more or less the same structures, but relatively, when you have 62 to 1 or 62 to 8, that would be copper to oxygen. You're going to get a behavior, what we call copper oxide. It'll look blue because the hydrogen's the red, and you have the ultraviolet at the center, And so somewhere in there you have blue, and that's where the copper sits, okay, relative to hydrogen. But again, those colors are only what we interpret as those ratios. If I slow those down, those frequencies from the Fourier spectral analysis, there'll be a chord. It'll be a chord. It'll be a harmonic structure. Or if I slow it down, it'll be tempos, and I get the metronomes to click, and they'll click at 2 oxygens to 1 copper. And so you'll get an increase in amplitude of CuO2. You'll get that, just like you will get with an amino acid, where you get where they click together. So it doesn't really matter. So in other words, their behaviors, their behaviors relative to the differential. So
who's marking? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, right. Do you understand that? Right. It's not that they don't. There's not a. How do I put this? If I play a note on a piano, and then I play a different note on the same piano, okay? They're both notes on a piano. But if you can tell, hey, this note's higher than that note, by how much? Right, a third or a fifth or a seventh. You don't even need to know the frequencies. You just need to know that it's a third higher or a fifth higher or a seventh higher and so on. That's how we measure the energy packages of plasmas in exactly the same way. They're all basically plasmas. They're all like, 88 keys on a keyboard, right? What's the difference between the low one and the high one? Well, in a way, nothing. They're all the same. But like they say in Thailand, same, but different. This was a lower one, and that's a higher one. Okay? They're faster.
Mario, I lost you. May I ask you a question so I understand you better?
Understand what?
I lost you a little bit. May I ask you one question to understand you better?
Yeah.
Because we lost when you start with the hydrogen and the water. But if I create from copper ratio 1 to 8, then it's the same ratio, but the density is higher, I presume. So then you need another ratio to create water.
No,
because
copper.
Also the density of the plasma is bigger. That's why copper is smaller than CO2. And what you said is true. What you said is true.
Copper's not 8. No, copper's not 8. Copper, you don't have a ratio of 8 to 1 with copper.
I don't say that. But if I create with copper and another, I shall create 1 to 8 in ratio. We talk
That's
about
right. Then you'll get
so let me ask you. I know what you saw is very beautiful. And you are right and Jalal are right, but you are both talking about a different moment.
Yeah, but look.
Because you are so beautiful. You want to share it so beautiful. I have the same problem. I am so excited sometimes that I talk, that my excitement pushes the knowledge from my words away in the other people. And I see what you want to share is beautiful because I saw the same thing in a container that's nano-coated, so no rays can come out. You create more water between the layers of the plasmas.
Well, yes,
because that entity is already there. But outside, you can also work the other side. You can also, like iron, attract CoOHN, and when it's getting backfeed loop, it pulls another in. So you are right in one condition, and Jalal is right in another condition. And now we lost each other. Not only we, I think the whole group is losing each other now. Maybe you have to explain it slowly what you mean. Jalal has to explain slowly what he means. And then you see you are both right, but talking about another moment in the cycle of the plasma.
Yeah. Well,
I love you both. I love me. I stopped talking now. Sorry. I just want to help you that others understand what you mean. I know what you mean.
Yeah. Well, but see, this idea of what's a solid, liquid, and gas is they're not absolutes. If you can change your field strength of your arm to where it's not in tune with the table in front of you anymore, then your hand will go right through it. Or if you change it, it'll become a liquid to you. Or if you leave it the same, it'll be a solid. It's the relative differences between your field strength and its field strength that dictate the behavior at the point of interaction. Look, if I take any two gases and the difference between those is equal to a water, you'll get water. I mean, people have been doing it. They're getting water buildup. Why? They don't have any water. They use a hydrogen gas, right? I mean, we've been doing it.
Why, Mario? Why do we create water? If two waves are entangled, it creates a neutron.
Well, because you happen to have...
survive. Listen. Because the neutron wants to survive, it creates a proton and an electron, then you get H.
Well,
and
no,
the oxygen is already inside the ball.
But again, you're thinking in terms of...
Where the equality is from the field...
The proton does not... The proton does not... The neutron does not divide into a proton and an electron. It divides into 12 rivers of energy that cross and create...
It depends. Where does the proton come from in your mind, if I may ask?
There's the neutron that divides into 12 rivers of energy that cross. There's no protons, neutrons, or electrons in there at all. Not like that. And Mr. Keshe has never explained it in the way you're saying it. You may have heard it, what he said, and thought he's talking about that because he uses those words, but I promise you, he has not said that. He is saying that there don't have protons and neutrons and electrons in an atomic structure. It's a plasma, okay? The neutron is the soul that opens up. It divides itself. It's
Look,
how
Mario, if this is the field, the two green lines, and this is the source of the field. This is the source of the fields. It also creates waves. Listen, I did get it from my soul. I walk here with the knowledge from my soul. I still need to read the books, but I see light, the density of light. If this is equal, this right here, then you get the two bags from the Egyptians, right? And this is the two pineapples from the Nubbly. They put it here. And then the waves are trapped. And if they are entangled in their own gravitational fields, then the neutron appears because it's going to be one. It will decay because it has no survival. So it will put this web out. This is Adam. It will put this web out here. And this is the electron. Or the moon and the earth. Or the earth and the sun. Because in the between, from the layers of the column barrier, from the column barrier to the sun, this is the position of Earth, this is Mercury, this is the second, this is, and go on. But that is because this layer interacts with the rays of this layer and with the rays from outside space. So you are right. But Jalal talked about a different position, but you are so eager to explain that you just filled with your mind, and I know you are right. I know what you said is beautiful, but it is in certain conditions. Because if I put the same condition on another planet, you don't get water. So if my happy GANs is a planet like the sun, and small, like another sun, big sun, and a small GANs is like our sun, you won't get on the same ratio the planet Earth. Because here the planet Earth has to be further away. And it will not be the same because there are other conditions. Because how higher the density is, the further your ratio has to be, the further the turning point has to be of creation, of the equal balance to create the water. If you have plutonium, you have to go all the way outside to get water. But if you have water and a little bit heavier, you can very close to get water. Or you have to rotate your ball so hard that you change the position. Then the ratio of your reactor has to be faster to put the water outside. Or maybe with plutonium smaller, that we can maybe manipulate it on that direction. I don't know that piece, not yet, but I know this. I see it all around me. I see it my whole life. I never had the words to explain. Thanks to plasma science, I can explain it now. Understand what I explain? Like when you create GANs, you create this plasma, right? Maybe inside. But remember, when you create GANs, this one is you in the middle, because your intention was there. So that is why you dictate the GANs, because you have no dimension inside the plasma of the GANs. You're the hollow spot inside the GANs. You are the dark matter in the GANs. You programmed it that way. So it changed your intention where you need it to be. And in the garden, yes, I saw it. Then I started explaining. Because when the waves are entangled, they fall in their own gravity fields when they have the same strings, like you explained so beautiful with the snares of sound. They are tracked. They fall in their own gravitational fields, but you can even have a plasma with only one, because then it's very big and then it falls to each other. And then you have your layers from outside, from another universe, and then starts the creation of a new universe. Every universe starts in the beginning with one light, trapping itself in its own gravitational fields, creating then fields. And fields create layers. And layers create the attraction of the repulsion of energy. Depends if the higher strings is outside or the higher strings is inside. And that is depend of the ratio of the other one who gives or takes. If you have the big one and the small one is going to be like this. If I create this one to be smaller, the ratio will go higher.
Yeah, well, that's you're right.
It's so beautiful. Try to be patient with us to explain us what you saw. I have the same problem. I want to throw the whole sea with knowledge over everybody, and now I start learning last 3 months. That
well,
I have
what
to
you
be
just said
down.
was the transmutation of elements. If you change the ratio, the behavior changes. So if you have what you call a ratio of 8:1, you're going to get water. It doesn't matter what GANs materials you use. If you have a cocktail of GANs over here and a cocktail of GANs over here, and there's a linking at a position between those two that are 8:1, you will have water raining. If you have it at whatever 62, you will see gold or copper. See, that's what those elements are. They're pulse rates and an increased amplitude that comes within our range of our inadequate sensory organs at a certain ratio based on hydrogen. We know this to be true. Hydrogen was the baseline that they figured out. It's a way to calculate its frequency. They're not actually calculating the frequency, but they get a baseline constant frequency. And then they were able to extrapolate from that Fourier's spectral analysis to get the actual frequencies, pulse rates relative to the hydrogen of all the other elements. That's how they're doing it. They're measuring the intervals. That's what that is. That's what those numbers represent. The intervals. That's the thing. And it exists at every level of existence. It exists on a galactic scale and it exists on a atomic scale. When I say that, that's the amount of plasma stuff there. See, that's another thing is I'm talking about the ratios of the frequencies of the pulse rates. But then there's another thing. There's how much stuff is there. When the field of the Earth interacts with the field of the sun, it's the difference of the amount of plasma stuff there is going in and out of that hole, drilling a hole, that splashes out. If they're very, very close to each other, they could be massive fields. But if they're really, really close to each other, there'll be a really tiny little differential. That'll be the differential of their frequency pulse, but it's also the difference, it's their mass. How much plasma stuff is getting shot out and forming a structure around that central core, that hole in the universe. Okay, so you have an atomic size mass. So no matter how big those fields are that are interacting, you have this really tiny bit of scrapings coming off of those fields, very tiny little amounts, mass. And then you have molecule-sized masses, plasmas, and you have planetary-sized masses, and you have solar system-sized masses, and you have galactic-sized masses, and so on. So, and subatomic particle masses, right? Inside each plasma is 128 layers of times 12 times however many octaves there are. How many plasmas are inside those plasmas, right? It's division, right? And it's how many times can you divide an inch? So how many times can you divide a neutron? How many times can you divide the unicos? That's what's going on. It's dividing within its structure, and it's based on these ratios. Always that as a really simple standard of weights and measurements to understand plasmas. And we have to abandon this idea that you have a hydrogen atom. It's not an atom. It's the field pulsing out to here and contracting again. Oh. At a certain frequency. So it's going in and out, pulsing. This is literally what the 129 Tesla was about. It created a link with something, and then boom, you'd have this pulse. And it kept getting bigger because it had the feedback loop. Right? That's what's happening.
Why is my CO smaller than CO2?
Sorry, you have what?
The ratio of CuO, the ratio, if I look with my eyes, if I observe, it's smaller than CO2. But in my imagination, I have to my imaginary lab. I explain it to myself, and then I try to explain it. It is because it's heavier and there is more gravitational force pulling in because there is more heavier stuff. So the ratio is smaller of CuO.
No. It's not the ratio. I don't know what you mean.
The density is higher, so it is smaller.
No, there's no. On atomic levels, they're all.
Look to your CO, please. Look to your CO, please. This is my last thing I ask you, and then I have to go working. But I watch back what you explained. Thank you.
Well,
look to your events and see the difference.
The size of the plasma is based on how much stuff there is and how far it can push out into the environment. So atomic ones, they're a little bit bigger and smaller relative to each other, but they're atom-sized stuff. And the molecular ones are just plasmas. Every atom has got an atom itself is the interaction of a field with another field. So it's got its own, the way the hydrogen interacts with the oxygen, how you have an energy signature for a water molecule. You also have an energy signature for the nitrogen itself, because the field interacting with the earth and the sun, each one has its own frequency pulse there. So the difference of this one or that one, this one will create a layer that connects to that one, then connects to that one connects to that one, and so on. And there'll be gaps. So the nitrogen itself has its own energy signature because it's basically, it's got a mother and a father too. It's got a mother, the earth, and the mother, or how you want to look at it, and where the fields are interacting, you're getting nitrogen. So, in a way, you get what we call a nitrogen atom. It's got a mother and a father. And so they all have that. So everyone's got its own spectrum analysis, right? That's what they're looking at. They're looking at the layers. But again, I can't emphasize this enough. When you have the oxygen and then the layer of the nitrogen and then a layer of the carbon, these are pulsings at ratios of 8 then it pulses out to here to 7, pulses out to here to 6, and then you get a pulse out here to 8, to 1 rather. Or relatively speaking, 3 amps to 1, or 8 amps to 1. It's actually what it really is. Okay, what you're looking at is, this is an energy bubble that's popping out at a ratio of 1 to 6 to 7 to 8. That's what the energy is. It's not a physical heart, it's energy. And it's energy that's expanding and contracting, expanding and contracting. And there are ratios of these. And that ratios, as long as the ratios stay the same, it doesn't matter whether x to 1, x times 1, x times 1, and x times 6, and 7, and 8. As long as you have energy pulses that have these 3 ratios, you'll always get a container at this ratio. So there are life forms in the upper atmosphere that X is much faster than Rx. There are amino acid-based living forms living in the upper atmosphere. We're down here at the salt water. X is a much slower field strength, frequency, pulse, right? But then you also have how much stuff there is. In one amino acid, there's a certain amount of plasmatic stuff there. So we're not one amino acid. We're how many? Millions, billions of these, all flocking together and acting like a single flock of amino acids in the cells, okay? And because this is hydrogen, you have positions for 128 layers here that this can link to. So when you get an interaction with a plasma that's got a pulse rate of 62, it links and you get whatever. You get the physicality. If it links to iron, you get the blood or the whatever, right? And you get, your hemoglobin, right? So what's hemoglobin? It's this interacting with this, creating a feedback loop at whatever position that creates this pulsing. It's energy, not particles. And it's just...
May I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So let's say, can you clean the board? I want to ask one question. Please.
Okay, while you're doing that, I just want to address something. See, there's a mistake. If we say, if I take my hydrogen and my oxygen and my water molecule, for example, and I take it to planet Zeus, then it's not water. Well, that's true. But if I take 2 plasmas that have those same ratios and I can keep those ratios the same, then yes, you do have water in planet Zeus because it's the ratios. But what will happen is the oxygen won't be 8 to 1 relative to planet Zeus. So if you try to take that pulse rate and because it does have an absolute value.
Okay, let's hear from Armin here now, Mario. That would be good. Okay, so let's clear the whiteboard and let Armin get his say in here.
Let's say if you have a hydrogen, H3, sorry about this, what the hell? You have carbon, you have Cu, you have calcium, you have zinc, if I mix in one jar all together Now what I have.
Okay, well, okay. Well, you got to look at the numbers.
No. What I have. These are all plasma, but if I mix it together, what I have.
Well, but okay, but you got to look at the numbers. What number do you use for zinc, Armin?
Doesn't matter the numbers. What I have, I will have.
But the whole basis of what I'm saying is those numbers from the atomic, even if they're wrong, that's why I'm asking you what number you use, because you're going to use the ones that Mr. Keshe uses more than anybody else I would know. So your numbers are going to be closer. Even then, they're not always accurate. So, but I need the numbers that you're using, and then you link the layers by their ratios. So that's what you're going to get. You're going to get a molecular structure that's going to be based on the interaction of not just zinc as a single plasma. It's an egg inside an egg inside an egg inside. It's a plasma inside a plasma. The structure of the zinc by itself is actually oxygen. It's not even pure, really, even the best, but whatever. It's not just a ball. It's a ball inside a ball inside a ball inside a ball, and they have ratios of their pulsing at 1 to 2 to 2 to 1, 3 to 1, up to say 128 to 1. So I need, and hydrogen is 1. Whatever the actual frequency is, I'm talking about the ratios. Hydrogen in the upper atmosphere is not the same frequency as the lower.
Let's forget about the frequencies. Let's forget about notes. Let's forget about everything. I had a simple question to ask. If I have this package of energy, this package of energy, this package of energy, and mixing in one pot, now what I have?
Well, I missed drawing it.
I have plasma strength.
Okay, look, here's what I see when I see a CO2 molecule. I see oxygen inside carbon, inside an oxygen.
No, I see different.
I know.
I see carbon 12, oxygen 16, and I see if I mix it, I will have 28.
Yeah, that's one way of looking at it.
No, it's not one way. It's a one package of energy.
Well, here's another way of looking at it. I have a plasma of oxygen that's got 128 layers. And I've got a plasma we call carbon that's got 128 layers.
Why are you going to that layers? What is the layers means? Layers means it's for me plasma. It's one frame. There is no layers. Layers become when it becomes in a matter state.
That's not. I don't see that, Armin. It's no matter state.
Let me tell you one thing. If this is the
how can you have an oxygen?
Listen. We listen to you very, patiently, and want to understand. I want to understand myself. If I have a sun, and from the sun its field coming and opposing to the Earth's magnetic field, until it enters, it's in a plasma state. Has no name. A minute it enters, then it starts to convert. Here, there is no oxygen, there is no zinc, there is no copper, there is no nothing until it reaches and enters to the atmosphere.
Yes, but Armin,
where is your layers in here?
Look, first of all, I actually just showed this. There are layers in between here, and there is an interaction in here, but not to us. When it enters the upper atmosphere, you have the nitrogen is created, and then you get the different.
No. You did not answer my question. I said before entering to the atmosphere, what's this plasma you're going to call? You're going to call 120 layers or 110 10 layers or 1 layer or 2 layer?
Well, it depends on the scale.
Actually, until it enters it, there is no scale. It's a strength of the plasma which reaches to the Earth.
No, I mean, it depends on how far you zoom in or out. If you zoom out, you won't see anything. It's just this layer to that layer. But if you zoom in close enough, you'll say, oh, wait a minute.
Okay, you're saying from the sun.
But then, look, if you zoom in between here and here.
I am not zooming. I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, you're thinking in absolute values, Armin. You're thinking in absolutes. There's an absolute. There's nothing here because you don't see it, because you can't interact with it. Doesn't mean there's nothing there. And
I'm not saying there's nothing there. It's full of energy, but do you have a name?
There's also life.
Do you have a name for it? You can call it zinc,
plasma,
copper. What you can call it? Which strength of creation?
Essence of creation, because there's fields interacting here, there's fields interacting everywhere. But you're right. It does take an interaction. You're right. It takes an interaction. So you don't have the interactions in our realm until it comes into contact at the upper atmosphere. However, even you said this, the nitrogen, oxygen, carbon, and hydrogen in the upper atmosphere are not tangible to us, but yet you have those. You have this one.
Because they are in a gaseous state.
That's one way of looking at it. You could look at it that once these plasmas come in contact with the salt water, it slows down their fields, but the ratios remain the same. If you want to call this 12, 14, and 16, or what, 6, 7, and 8, which Mr. Keshe has used, and this one's 1. As long as you have these same ratios, you have an amino acid conditioned plasma field. It's the ratios, it's the base, it's where these are linking. There's 128 layers here, 128 layers here, say 128 layers, but they don't all interact at the same layer.
But why 128? What is that?
Well, that's a number of a fractal pattern. There's actually a infinite number, but it goes in patterns of 128. But it doesn't matter. Anything between 1 and 128 covers more than our spectrum of elements and our sight and our hearing and our feel. So that's certainly the fractal pattern of our existence. What's tangible to us is in a range of about 128 layers of energy frequencies. Okay? And this has a certain amount of stuff in it. It's very tiny. But when it comes in contact with the salt water, it's still 1 to 6 to 7 to 8.
I'm not there. I'm just want to clarify one thing, because I have certain things to explain. That's why I want to clarify that we understand.
Well, okay, go ahead. I'll let you speak then. Go ahead and explain it then. Okay.
All I'm asking you, this is the sun and this is the plasma. Until it don't have an opposite, do this plasma have a name? Can we call it 1, 2, any measurement? Can we give a measurement? Or we can say this is total plasma. When it reaches to atmosphere, then it starts to divide. Because let's say if we have a zinc here, this field, which travel from here and enters it here, it will reaches to its destination. Let's say if we have in our stomach, the food goes in, then it goes through our intestine. If our water don't carry zinc, even we ate zinc, it will not absorb. In our totality, in our water, whatever material we're eating, in our water, it carries it. That's why it can absorb it. No food goes into it just field transfer. If we don't have a zinc, we don't have a copper, we don't have a calcium, how we can absorb it? So where is the measurement in total plasma? If I mix all the GaNs that we have, I can call it 1. I have 1 plasma.
Yes, Armin, can I come in?
But the same plasma, I can, how can I say? I can mix it so fast that the release of this, all the plasmas, now I can call it 100 strength. The same. Then, if I rotate it 200 times, I can call it strength of 200. Sorry, of my drawings. The same plasma. I can increase the strength.
Well, you know what, Armin, again, I have to come in here. You're increasing you can increase the volume, or you
volume is the same, but I increase the strength.
How? By rotating it faster.
Definitely. By beating you release the energy, huh?
By rotating it faster. Is that what you're saying?
Definitely. You know, in homeopathy, homeopathy, that makes.
Okay, but let me explain.
You explain. I will not speak anymore.
Well, Armin, I'm trying to show you something. If you would let me.
Mario, you've been trying to show for over 2 hours here now. Why don't you let Armin speak and then answer his question rather than trying to teach the same thing that you've been teaching over and over and over for the last 2 hours here. And people aren't getting it anymore. We have to penetrate this more by getting a different perspective here. So just try to go with Armin a bit here and work with each other more, and we'll try to get through this, I think. Carry on.
All I am saying, guys, if you have one package of plasma, you can...
You're saying, Armin, how's this going now?
All I am saying, if you have you mix any kind of GaNs together, you have 1. You can increase the strength by mixing it. You mix 100 times, it's 100. The same plasma, you mix 200 times, it's 200 of strength. So when you do your patches, you have 1 and you have 100. It's 1 gram, or it's 5 gram, or it's 100 gram. That does not matter anymore. Because if you have a 100 gram, if I take a sample over here, just a little bit, put it in here, and this 1 gram, I can increase 100 times more. The same with homeopathy. Go back way behind the teachings. What is homeopathy? You beat up, now you have, let's say, different value. Same thing in the plasma. This is all I want to explain. Forget about numbers, forget about this, forget about that strength. 1 to 100. The same value. That's all. Then you don't complicate yourself. It's zinc, copper, hydrogen, nitrogen, whatever you have, you mix together, it's 1 plasma. Then if you have a calcium in here, if you put it in between your body and you stand, now you have a seed of the calcium too, which is in totality. Doesn't matter it's 1 gram or 100. That's all I want to explain, guys. Do not complicate yourself too much. Try to simplify it and understand it simply. That's why I said this is the sun, this is the earth. When the sun radiates its energy in a plasma, it has no name. That's all. You can continue now.
Okay. Guess it's back to you, Mario. The ball's back in your court. Anybody else like to weigh in here? I see Dimitri had your hand up, but I think maybe that was from before. And maybe there's somebody else that'd like to get their voice in. Jedi's made a number of comments here, but I don't want to just start reading them out, really.
I think nature is so simple. You've got to make things very simple. Why complicate our lives? Yeah, I'm with Armand, 100%.
That's all. So you call it 100 times, 200 times, 200. I don't know. You know, we come up with the names, so much names. I'm already confused. So, but we simplify it and say, okay, this is, I have 1 plasma. I have a strength of 500 because by atomic mass, you can calculate what kind of plasma you have. You have irons, you have zinc, you have copper, you have this, but it's a package of energy. But when you mix it together, you have 1 plasma now.
It's all hydrogen or neutron.
It's a 1 neutron. It all came from hydrogen. So when you mix it together, it's back to the energy, huh? Back to the field. Strength of the field. That's all. Then it's going to be more easier for health, for the rest, to carry on. Not too complicated, to do this, not to do that. And each package of energy is a seed. If you have a copper there, now you have a copper seed. Then we're going to be more easier to move on because we're not going to get angry, we're not going to get anxious, so, you know, this is this way or that way, no. Nature simplifies things, we complicate things. That's all, guys.
I read yesterday, apparently, I think it's in the United States, they want to prohibit the mixture of water, what they call it, what you've just mentioned. Shaking the water and making the medicine.
Homeopathic.
Exactly.
Homeopathy is the same way. You have a 1 part, you beat up so much, you say, I have now 100 parts of it. It's the same thing.
But they want to prohibit it in the United States now. It's incredible.
So then simplify the same thing in a plasma. What you do, you have 5 grams of gas, you can make it strength of 1,000. Then it's going to be easier. You don't have to remember all these things. Complicated names, quartz, and many other, I don't know. I'm already confused. I heard so much. That's all, guys. Don't even complicate. Then it's going to be easier for you to create patches, to create anything to rotate. With a small amount of gas.
Okay, well, the main idea to take away is to keep it simple, I guess. But I think Mario has been trying to simplify with his format as well, because from his perspective, it's a much simpler way of proceeding than with, say, the table of elements, the way we've been approaching it, that kind of thing. So everyone has different perspectives, and we're all here to help clarify and pass on our understanding and knowledge to others, so that we can all elevate ourselves to a different, higher level of understanding and get a greater perspective on all this. It's a process, though, and it's a struggle, and we have to be patient and tolerant, and both with others and ourselves through this to kind of get through it. It can be a bit of a mind boggler at times, and to confront one's own perceptions and preconceived ideas, and kind of take a chance and toss them out the window and try to accept someone else's perspective just to try it on and see if it fits, just for the heck of it. It's a bit of a tall order, but that's what we're here for. So keep trying to attain that vision of the plasma. I think we're all trying to achieve that in our own ways, and we find lots of commonality, but we also find differences, as the universe is. Any other comments about all this? What's your dog have to say there, Armin? It's just dreaming about plasma. You hear it in the background there. Every once in a while, a little snarl or something going on in a dream. All right, well, perhaps it's time to close things down for today's session. There's nothing else to say. I thank everybody for their interactions here. It's been very interesting to I enjoy hearing Mario. It's mind-boggling for me sometimes. It's hard to get my head around, do I really understand this, and so on. And but every time I listen, I get a little bit more of a clue of where he's coming from with this. And I appreciate your input there, Mario. Keep at it, and maybe one day I'll be able to play guitar too.
Thanks, Rick. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mario. You're a true musician.
Just got to let it all sink in, and we'll get something clear out of it.
Yeah, perhaps we'll let it sink in, and maybe there's something that will come up for a question in the Knowledge Seekers Workshop coming up on Wednesday, 9 a.m. Central, or sorry, Thursday, 9 a.m. Central European time. I wonder if there's some way we can formulate a question from this discussion that we've had. Is there some key core question that needs to be asked to Mr. Keshe to clarify things here? It'd be nice, Mario, if you could interact somehow with Mr. Keshe and ask him a question that can allow you to take it to the next level, or allow you to explain it easier to others, or something like that.
Yeah, I thought about that many, many times. I'm convinced that there's instantaneous communication between us. And there's been a transfer of information. It's just a question of hitting the right field strength of it at the right time. For me, I can come on here. I am really, it is Mr. Keshe's teaching. In fact, everything Armin said really was confirmation of what I was showing. It's all based on the hydrogen and these ratios and such. And again, Mr. Keshe already confirmed that. You go back 3 weeks ago or maybe a month ago in the Knowledge Seekers Workshop, it's at the beginning of his teaching. He specifically brings it up and he confirms it. But I have to realize I am not, I mean, I like to think of myself as a Keshe Foundation family member, so to speak, but I'm not an official representative of the Keshe Foundation in any way. So any family can have their crazy Uncle Mario who says a bunch of things. But with Mr. Keshe, he has to be really, really careful because what he says isn't always what people hear. And so if he says things in a certain way like me, I showed that Fourier spectral analysis. And Dimitri, it offends him almost, you know, but I didn't invent the Fourier spectral analysis. We need to use that to compare, but just reanalyzing it. See, so again, I can, you know, it's not so much that I'm stepping in it. It's that if people try to follow me, they're stepping in it, so to speak, and I'm getting people trapped. And Mr. Keshe has to be really, really careful to avoid that, right? And then there's other things going on in the background, who knows? So, you know, Mr. Keshe confirmed what I've showed. If you go back, you'll see he confirmed it directly. And he specifically mentioned about my work with the periodic table of elements, and he called me by name, but I'm the one who showed that so many times. And all of you have seen that work, and so is Caroline, so is Mr. Keshe. It's not new. So I leave it to Mr. Keshe to do what he thinks he needs to do to bring everybody along. But I can tell you this, what I'm showing here is just so far removed from the way people are thinking that it's not hard to understand, it's hard to believe. And certain words, certain phrases trigger prejudged ideas in people, and then they think I'm talking about that, but I'm not. And like you said, and I appreciate that, Rick, what I'm showing is so simple, it's ridiculous. There's nothing to it. And yet you can do more than just say the field strength is 1 or 100. You can actually look and measure the exact energy signatures of any behaviors. And this is, I'm convinced, what we really are going to need to start to do so that when we see a certain behavior or certain energy signatures, how are they behaving at our level of existence, and start looking for the patterns in that. We need to adopt a new measurement system and use that to measure the plasmas instead of this numbers from the periodic table and that. So it is simple, but it's just so far removed from the way people are thinking that it seems complicated, and for a lot of reasons. So things are just going the way they're supposed to. And I'm not going to put Mr. Keshe on the spot in a way that forces him to have to be diplomatic in a way, which I've already done. Excellent.
Well, it's always the dilemma, I think, is that there are multiple levels, and everybody has their level of understanding that goes into certain categories that way. And if you approach it from a high level of understanding only, then you're going to lose people on all the lower levels of the matter level, the nano level, the GANs level, and so on. And they won't understand because you're talking about the soul level, for example. But Mr. Keshe is clever in the way he teaches, and that he tries or is able to broadcast to all the levels simultaneously. Essentially, it's like a broad spectrum broadcast where it reaches the people on the matter level and raises them up to the next level. It reaches those that are focused on the nano and raises them up to the next level, and so on and so forth. And he's able to elevate the whole tide, you might say, or the whole ocean. And in that
and he
way,
also has
we all
crazy
gain.
Uncle Sorry, I just
No,
want
go
to.
ahead.
He also has crazy Uncle Mario in the family, who's actually speaking correctly, but it's crazy to a lot of people. So there I am here, putting this in you guys' heads. That's the only thing I can do. You know, I've been a teacher my whole life, and first thing I learned about teaching is you can't teach anybody anything. You can just present the material. If you just do it enough times and they come to it, if they want to understand it, they have to understand it. So, you know, I cannot teach this to you guys, but again, it's so far removed from the way people are thinking, have been thinking, that it seems really strange and far out and all the rest of it. But it is correct. I'm going to say that. But yeah, I think, right, need to let Mr. Keshe teach the way he knows. And I wouldn't want to put him in a spot where he has to. If people aren't ready to get it, then what's he going to do? He's just going to have to be diplomatic about it and explain it in a way that still nobody gets. So what's the point, right? But I do want to say I am really, okay, will and do have mistakes, or more so lack of, don't have all of it. But what I have and what I'm presenting is Mr. Keshe's teaching. It is Mr. Keshe's teaching. It has been confirmed by him every time. And I have looked for confirmation in all of his teachings and look for, right, how does that not fit what I'm doing? And then look for it and adjust my understanding. So I just wanted to say that. But I think leave it here, and then at some other time I come back and go through it again in another way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because
well, I think that's the secret, is to approach it in another way. Maybe for me, it was hard to follow sometimes, because when you're making the marks on the whiteboard, it doesn't show up for quite a few seconds later until you release the mouse and the lag comes through. And so I'm not seeing all the things you're talking about. Then suddenly it pops up, and sometimes I don't even see it when it pops up because the drawings are so small and with scratches all over. So I get confused about what you're talking about, and then I just totally lose it and I can't follow from then on. I think other people are probably finding that as well. And maybe we need to take more breathers, or just do more diagrams that are bigger and more simple in a way, or more clear, let's say, and just go a little bit slower so that everybody, and check with people to see, do we have a common understanding at this point of what we're talking about here? Do we have some sort of, get more feedback, I guess, to see what the response is, and if people are understanding as we go along. Because
that's a good point. I'll keep that in mind. Yeah. And go through it again slowly, I think, in little bits, you know. I try to hit on a higher thing I was trying to show, but because I know that it needs to be introduced first. This idea of the amplitude increase here is something that blew me away when I started realizing. I was, wow, okay, it's a really hard concept to grasp. But, okay, I brought it in. Okay, so now people are aware that at least I'm talking about this pulsing out, expanding of these fields at these pulses, you know, that kind of thing, you know, what is hydrogen, you know, so just put that in your mind. And then next time it's not a brand new, like what?
Well, that's right. That's right. There's a saying that you have to hear a new idea at least 3 times in order for it to even start to sink in. Otherwise it just completely goes over the top of our heads, as we say.
Yeah, and we're talking about analyzation of Mr. Keshe's teaching. Really, that's what I'm doing. So it's more than 3 times, that's for sure.
Yeah, right. It's hard enough.
For me, it has
been. I mean, he's told us the same things literally hundreds and hundreds of times, and most of us still aren't really getting it, you know, at least the full manifestation of it and so on. And that's, you know, as it is, it's a massive body of knowledge, and there's many levels of understanding of all that. And to grasp it all at once just ain't going to happen for any human life forms. You know, it's even Mr. Keshe doesn't know everything. A lot of it he actually knows when he starts talking about it. You get that information when you at the point of when you need it. You don't accumulate it all and keep it in your brain and have this massive dictionary of all these terms and so on. He never keeps notes and has notes about what he's going to talk about and all the details and numbers and stuff. It's not his style. He goes with it and brings forth the knowledge from deep within himself, and part of it's in his DNA and RNA at this point, I believe, or from a different level, direct from the soul level, whatever, the source, what we call the source. So that's what we're fortunate to receive, and that's what we're all trying to be as creators, and those that are able to speak closer from the source as well. Well, Jedi says plasma is the next level, one of the levels, only the next. Yes, that's true. Mr. Keshe has mentioned plasma comes after the nano and GANs and gaseous and all that. And then the next level after plasma is plasma manipulator, the one who's able to control the world of plasma or interact directly with that invisible world that we've been trying to describe for the last hours. All right, we should really shut down here now. I think Gat was on the private course there, and some people might want to go to that. And so stay tuned for the Knowledge Seekers Workshop coming up, and it's I'm sure it'll be a very interesting interchange, and there's a lot happening on the world stage and on the big picture, and with the Keshe Foundation and so on. So we're in a very exciting time, very fortunate to be alive at this juncture in history. Yay, good for us. So far, so good. Okay, any last minute comments? Going once, going twice, going gone.
Fantastic workshop, Rick. Thank you for your patience.
I watch back.
Very good. I hope you enjoyed it and can get some sort of understanding from all the squiggles and squawks that have occurred here. But it's good just to get together and attempt to understand these ideas, whether we do or not. The effort to understand sometimes is worth the whole price of admission, let's say. All right, so we all exercised our understanding muscles. That might be handy one day. Okay, I'm going to end the live stream now, and just put on the farewell screen here. And spin the Keshe Plasma Reactor Group for Wednesday, December 5th, 2018. I'm your host, Rick Crammond, and we'll see you all same time, same place next week for the Plasma Group, as well as there'll also be a public testimonials meeting next Monday, I believe, in the public teachings, and that'll be interesting. I've convinced Flint, I think, to actually talk about his testimonial with the Keshe Foundation particular product that he has had amazing results with. So I can't give you any more hints than that, but it's a good one to catch, as well as One Nation, One Planet, One Race for World Peace on Tuesday of next week. What else can I put a plug in for? Well, if you have massive amounts of cash stashed in a mattress somewhere, it'd be a good time to make a large donation to the Keshe Foundation. And I don't want everybody to put their last $5 in that doesn't have any money, but there's people out there that have massive amounts of money and they don't really even know what to do with it. I don't have a lot of friends like that, but I know they're out there. And it is a good time right now for those people to let go of some of that they've accumulated over time and make a donation to the Keshe Foundation so that Keshe Foundation can expand and complete their missions and continue teaching and spreading the knowledge and understanding to others and elevating others around the planet. We'll get ourselves so we're situated to be able to get off this mud ball and do a little exploring in space without being going about it the correct way, let's say. So this is what we look forward to, and I think that's going to happen a lot faster than even we expect in the Keshe Foundation. I think there's going to be huge changes in the next month or two, I would say, in the worldwide situation. And if we all start cooperating on this silly planet, then there's amazing, beautiful future that we can expect to participate in. So, all right, on that note, let's wrap it up, and we'll see you all next time around.